America once led the world in AI and biotechnology research, but something just triggered a wave of panic. Saudi Arabia is offering top US scientists up to $1 million, tax-free, instant labs, and zero ethical red tape. No questions asked. Overnight, research teams are vanishing from American universities, taking code, secrets, and even entire data sets with them. Some in Washington say this is the new Cold War, but with cash instead of missiles. Why are America's brightest minds fleeing, and what could it mean for US security? To answer that, you need to see how fast everything is changing. At the heart of Saudi Arabia's global science offensive sits a war chest that few countries can rival. The Public Investment Fund now controls assets close to $1 trillion, a sum that can change the direction of entire industries overnight. In 2024, this financial power turned towards science and technology, launching a campaign that stunned even veteran university administrators in the United States. Recruiters from Saudi-backed centers began sending out offer letters with numbers that shattered expectations. American scientists, many earning between $120,000 and $250,000 a year, suddenly faced contracts promising tax-free salaries starting at $500,000 and climbing to $1 million. The offers did not stop at pay. Each principal investigator was handed a blank check for their own lab, with startup budgets ranging from $1 to $3 million. There were no drawn-out grant competitions, no months of waiting for committee approvals, just a signature and a flight to Riyadh or NEOM. For researchers used to the slow churn of U.S. federal funding, the contrast felt almost surreal. In the words of one administrator, it takes 9 months and 3 rounds of paperwork to get a $200,000 NIH grant approved. By then, the science has moved on. In Saudi Arabia, the money lands in days, not quarters. Scientists can hire teams, order equipment, and begin experiments immediately, all without the tangle of overlapping review boards and compliance checks that dominate the American system. The scale of these incentives is not limited to a handful of star professors. Saudi institutions have posted hundreds of open roles on global job boards, targeting everyone from postdocs to established lab directors. The packages include luxury housing, international school tuition for children, and even fast-tracked residency or citizenship for families. For many, the chance to skip the endless grant-writing treadmill and finally focus on research is more than just a raise. It is a complete reset of their professional lives. Behind these offers is the Public Investment Fund, fueled by decades of oil revenue and now rebranded as the engine of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. Billions are earmarked for science with the explicit goal of transforming the kingdom into a global technology powerhouse. The message is clear. If you have the skills, Saudi Arabia has the resources. The only real question is how many will say yes, and how quickly America's scientific edge can be bought away. Inside Saudi Arabia's new science enclaves, the rules that slow research elsewhere seem to vanish. For scientists accustomed to months of compliance paperwork and layers of ethics boards, the difference is immediate. At NEOM and KAUST, administrative staff process research proposals in days, not quarters. Internal documents describe a streamlined pathway for high-priority projects, especially those flagged as vital to the kingdom's technological future. While national policy requires institutional review board approval for any work involving human subjects or gene editing, these centers operate with a level of speed and autonomy that is almost unheard of in the West. A recent CRISPR embryo trial at a NEOM-affiliated lab illustrates the point. In the United States, such a study would face years of debate, public comment, and likely rejection by federal regulators. At NEOM, the proposal moved from submission to green light in just under 60 days, according to internal timelines reviewed by industry analysts. The process included an expedited review by a local ethics committee, but the outcome was never in doubt. For the scientists, this meant the difference between shelving a world-first experiment and running it with full institutional backing. Saudi law, on paper, still mandates informed consent, risk disclosures, and adverse event reporting. Yet the structure of these special zones gives administrators broad discretion to prioritize national initiatives. When a project is deemed strategic, such as advanced gene editing or autonomous robotics, approvals are fast-tracked, and oversight is concentrated in a handful of trusted officials. There is no evidence of blanket waivers or public exemptions, but the practical effect is the same. Research that would stall in the United States moves forward at breakneck speed. Scientists describe an environment where ethical debates are held behind closed doors, if at all. One American geneticist who requested anonymity recounted how her Saudi colleagues spoke openly about pushing boundaries that would be off-limits at home. The incentive is clear: deliver results, and the support, financial and administrative, will follow. There are no congressional hearings, no press leaks, no activist campaigns to slow things down. This operational freedom is not just a perk, it is the main attraction. For researchers frustrated by the inertia of Western oversight, Saudi Arabia offers a rare promise: the chance to run experiments at the frontiers of science, with only the thinnest layer of visible constraint. The ethical gap is not a matter of written law, but of culture and priorities. In this new system, speed is the ultimate currency, and the old guard of university regulation is left watching from the sidelines. In early February 2024, American scientists across the country woke to find their inboxes flooded. The emails arrived just after midnight, dozens, sometimes hundreds, all from addresses linked to Saudi research centers, recruitment agencies, and headhunters. The timing was no accident. By targeting researchers during off hours, the recruiters sidestepped university IT blocks and HR filters, ensuring their messages landed at the top of every morning's QA. The offers inside were anything but subtle. Subject lines promised triple salary, immediate lab, zero bureaucracy. The body of each email spelled out the terms: tax-free contracts starting at $600,000, full relocation for families, and instant access to new facilities in Neom or Riyadh. For principal investigators, the promises were even more dramatic: a blank check to build a team, $3 million in startup funds, and authority to set research priorities without oversight from U.S. funding agencies. Within days, word spread through academic Slack channels and private listservs. Postdocs at MIT compared notes with colleagues at Stanford and Berkeley. The pattern was unmistakable: the same template, the same urgency, the same promise of total autonomy. Some researchers received personalized messages referencing recent publications, patents, or even unpublished grant proposals. Recruiters made it clear they had done their homework. For many, the emails felt like a lifeline thrown into a storm. One genomics lab director, after years battling grant rejections and departmental politics, forwarded the offer to her team with a single line: "This is real." By the end of February, her entire group had submitted resignations. The university's HR office was caught off guard. The departures did not trickle out, they came in a single wave. The lab's NIH-funded project, years in the making, stalled overnight. Universities scrambled to respond, but the scale of the exodus outpaced any counteroffer. Some departments saw half their junior faculty vanish in a matter of weeks. Others lost senior scientists with decades of experience, taking with them not just expertise, but federally funded data and experimental protocols. The abruptness of the departures left empty offices, unfinished experiments, and a growing sense of alarm among remaining staff. The Midnight Blitz was more than a recruitment drive. It was a coordinated strike engineered to bypass institutional defenses and exploit the frustrations of America's best minds. As the dust settled, one thing was clear: the old rules of scientific loyalty no longer applied. Money, speed, and freedom had become the new currency. The question facing U.S. leaders was no longer how to retain talent, but how to stop the hemorrhage before the intellectual property left with it. Graduate students arrived at their labs to find half-empty benches and unanswered Slack messages. In some departments, the sudden departures left research teams stranded mid-project, with no one left to troubleshoot code, run experiments, or even log into shared servers. The effect rippled outward. One genomics group at a top U.S. university lost its entire senior staff in a single week, leaving junior researchers and international students scrambling to salvage experiments. Months of work vanished overnight as principal investigators, postdocs, and data engineers accepted Saudi contracts and walked out, often taking unpublished results and research protocols with them. The collapse of these teams did not just slow down progress, it erased it. Experiments were abandoned midstream, grant milestones went unmet, and federally funded projects were suddenly without leadership. In AI labs, Code repositories that once held the backbone of years-long research were locked, archived, or in some cases quietly cloned and migrated to private servers. While there is no public record of entire codebases or genomic datasets being exported wholesale, university IT departments flagged abrupt spikes in outbound data transfers, triggering internal reviews and frantic calls to legal counsel. The line between legal consulting and outright intellectual property flight became blurred, leaving administrators unsure how much had truly been lost. Graduate students, many on visas or mid-dissertation, found themselves without advisors. Some had spent years building data sets or developing algorithms now inaccessible behind new layers of non-disclosure. One PhD candidate wrote in a group email that they were stranded, with no PI and no way to finish their research. Departments tried to reassign students, but the scale of the exodus left faculty stretched thin, unable to offer meaningful supervision. For some, the only option was to start over or leave academia altogether. The hiring crisis deepened as news of Saudi offers spread. U.S. institutions struggled to fill open roles, facing a shrinking pool of qualified applicants. Recruiters reported that even mid-tier candidates were being poached before interviews could be scheduled. The cost of retaining top talent soared, with universities forced to consider counteroffers far above their standard pay scales, offers they often could not afford. Meanwhile, the loss of key personnel made it harder to compete for new grants, creating a downward spiral. Fewer researchers meant fewer grants, which meant less funding to attract replacements. In the background, administrators assembled emergency task forces to assess the damage. Some universities initiated audits to track missing data and unfinished projects, while others lobbied federal agencies for relief. But the reality was inescapable. The U.S. research pipeline, once the envy of the world, was now hemorrhaging both talent and output. For every lab that managed to regroup, several more found themselves gutted, with years of taxpayer-funded work at risk of disappearing into a legal and logistical gray zone. The scientific community watched as the intellectual infrastructure of American innovation began to erode, one department at a time. In a secure room on Capitol Hill, the atmosphere was tense. Congressional staffers gathered around a long table, stacks of briefing folders marked with export control warnings at their elbows. The agenda was clear. American technology, built with taxpayer dollars, was slipping away. Not to a familiar rival, but to a new player with nearly unlimited resources. A senior security official began the session with a blunt summary. Our best AI and genomics teams are being offered more in a single contract than we can pay in a decade. Some have already left. We don't know what's gone with them. The classified slides laid out the pattern. Dozens of departures from leading universities, nearly all in fields tied directly to national security. The names of recently vacated labs scrolled beside a list of ongoing federal projects, some funded by the Department of Defense, others by the National Institutes of Health. The concern was not just about people, but about the intellectual property and unpublished research they might carry abroad. One staffer pointed to a spike in outbound data flagged by university IT teams, code repositories, experimental protocols, even raw genomic data sets. The legal lines were murky, but the direction was not. A proposal landed on the table. Expand export controls to cover not just hardware, but algorithms, data, and even personnel transfers. The language was technical, but the message was unmistakable. For the first time in years, lawmakers faced the prospect that America's scientific edge could be lost not through espionage, but through open recruitment and legal contracts. The room fell silent as the implications settled in. The old assumptions about technological supremacy no longer looked so certain. Inside policy circles, the debate is urgent and divided. Some argue for sweeping new export controls, restrictions not just on hardware, but on algorithms, data sets, and even the movement of skilled researchers themselves. Legal teams warn that most current contracts do not prohibit scientists from taking their expertise or even unpublished work abroad. The ambiguity leaves universities scrambling to rewrite terms, while federal agencies weigh whether existing intellectual property laws can be stretched to cover the outflow of knowledge, not just physical inventions. A senior staffer reviewing the latest resignation wave put it bluntly. We have 12 months before our lead in certain fields is gone. The warning echoes across agencies, but consensus on action remains elusive. Some propose targeted retention bonuses for key researchers funded by emergency appropriations. Others push for a new federal registry to track talent departures in real time, hoping to catch patterns before they become crises. There is talk of conditioning future research grants on commitments to remain in the U.S., but university lawyers caution that such measures may be unenforceable or drive talent underground. At the heart of the debate is a question that has no easy answer. Can a system built on openness and academic freedom survive when rivals are willing to pay any price for an edge? The room is full of policy veterans, yet no one claims to have a playbook for this kind of contest. The legal lines are blurred, the strategic consequences are enormous, and the clock is running. For now, the only certainty is that the old assumptions no longer hold, and the next move will shape the future of American science in ways that are impossible to predict. Today, the world's brightest minds follow opportunity, not borders. As Saudi Arabia rewrites the rules with limitless funding and minimal oversight, America's scientific edge faces a new kind of test, one that money alone may not solve. In this race, the ultimate prize is not just technology, it is control over the future itself.